Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teamwork a Better Way podcast. I'm Christian Napier, and joined as always by my magnificent host, Spencer Horn. Spencer, how are you?
Great, Christian. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm doing well, and I understand you have fantastic news to share.
Oh, I do. Yes. My youngest daughter just gave birth to her first child, and we're so excited. We're going to go meet Eleanor right after we get off this podcast. And it's spelled after the Lord of the Rings flower, Eleanor, by the way.
Oh, wow. Okay, congratulations to mom and daughter, and to you and your wife as well. That's super exciting, and that makes a grandchild number what for you, Spencer?
Number seven.
Seven. Lucky seven. That's fantastic. Well, you're going to have a great time, and I know right after this you're going to go over there and see them. So I don't want to keep you too long. So let's dive right into this
Yeah, but
topic
you got
here.
some good news too, man. That I heard some great, exciting news for you.
Yeah, we had some good news last week. We landed a very substantial contract for us
I love that.
uh, late last week, and we're super excited to get to work on this project. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Just says so much about your value to different organizations, and I couldn't be happier.
Well, thank you very much, Spencer. And one of these days, I hope to have great news like you on a grandchild, but we're still in a holding pattern on that. But that's okay. No worries. We have a great topic
Yes.
for our viewers and listeners today. It was spurred by this article that we shared amongst each other that was published recently in the Harvard Business Review, entitled "How to Take Better Breaks at Work," according to research by, I hope I pronounce these correctly, these names, Jana Lubik and Duygu Biricik Gulserin. And the premise of it was, in today's workplace, it's been reported that almost 60% of employees are feeling burnout. Engagement is declining amongst U.S. workers, and these authors, they researched or analyzed 80 different studies around breaks, and we'll talk about those. But Spencer, in our conversation leading up to this podcast today, you mentioned that this is actually part of a broader challenge that organizations are facing, and so maybe you can kind of introduce us to that.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the latest reports on a topic that has been studied and looked at for a long time. I mean, productivity is so important. Team performance, what we talk about, almost weekly here, is so important for organizations to impact their bottom line in a positive way. So we need uh, employees, team members that are engaged, that are excited about the work, that are energized, ready to come to work. They're able to focus and solve problems. But that has been an issue or a challenge for decades. I mean, there are so many studies that have looked at this, and there's a concept called the productivity paradox in today's society, and that is it is easier and more difficult than ever to be productive. I mean, think of all the technology that we have, how productive we can be with our phones. How, I mean, this is a mini computer that can do so much. I can do so many things on my phone from anywhere. We have software, we have applications that are designed to streamline repetitive tasks so that we can focus our time and energy. I use a pretty complex CRM tool with Zoho that has uh, accounting, it has surveys, it has marketing tools, it just has everything, and I can do that all in one place. But at the same time, this technology also makes it harder for us to focus. I mean, we are constantly bombarded with buzzers and interruptions and emails, and so that creates some challenges for us. And if you look at the different types of workers that exist in all different fields, let's just divide them into low complexity, medium complexity, and high complexity work. Low complexity work, like fast food or just labor. Um, what a 1995 Harvard Business Review study found is that the most productive producers in that space were 3 times more productive than the least. And if you look at medium complexity job, let's look at like medical device or high tech type of jobs. Um, the highest, most productive employee was 12 times more productive than the least productive. But when you look at high complexity jobs, for example, say investment bankers or software engineers, the difference between the highest producers and the lowest producers can be infinite. And so, I think as our economy is shifting more and more towards medium and high complexity, our ability to be highly productive is huge. But at the same time, as you just saw, 60% of people are burned out, are disengaged, and that's an alarming number. And part of it is because of just the daily interruptions. Do you remember the movie Christian? Uh, what was it with what's um, oh my gosh, Minority Report. That's it. Do you remember
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
Minority? And what's his name?
Tom Cruise, the
Tom
lead.
Cruise. He walks into the Gap, and there's this billboard that says, "Welcome back." And how did those T-shirts that you bought last time work out for you? Customized marketing is happening today, right? I mean, you talk about something in your phone or your technology, or Alexa or Siri listens to you, and pretty soon you start seeing those advertisements show up. I mean, I talk about sore back stuff. Guess what I see on my phone all the time, right? Or knee pain or whatever. I see these ads customized just for me. It's like we don't even stand a chance today because, based on what we watch on TV, a lot of times on the Apple TV or Roku or whatever you use, we have customized marketing just for us. And so that movie Minority Report is coming to pass, but it's just so much attention stealing technology, and people are fighting for nanoseconds of our attention. Christian, don't you agree?
I agree. So this brings a question to me, Spencer.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it seems like we have, as you mentioned, this paradox. We have all kinds of tools that will help us be more productive, but actually, we might be less productive than we potentially are. And at the same time, we're feeling burned out while not being productive. So, what do you do here? Because it's easy to say, well, just take this device and
You can't
off
do
it,
that.
but we can't. I mean, we're tethered to these. So, one of the things that's proposed here is be more effective in taking our breaks and recharging our batteries,
Well, and,
so to
and we
speak.
and we got to get to that. And so, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun, because before we do that, I forgot to mention. I mean, there's an energy crisis. So people are drinking caffeine and rock stars and Mountain Dews and 5 hour energy, and I got caught up in that at one point. I've weaned myself off of that, but there was a study done by the Franklin Covey folks for 6 years, over 351,613 people, North America, Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, Latin America, um, just all these different parts of the world is where they studied people. And what they found, Christian, is that we're spending our time for 40% of our time on unimportant tasks. And so today it's harder to feel accomplished. That's part of the reason why we don't feel like our relationships are great. Our we're developing our talents, we're solving problems at work, because we're spending so much of our time being tired and working on things that are not important. And part of the reason is is if you think about how we've developed through the Industrial Revolution. I don't know if you ever saw, I'm going to reference another movie, but this goes way back. It's called Modern Times with Charlie Chaplin, where he's working in a factory, and all he did all day long was tighten two bolts with these big wrenches. And he'd go on a break, and his arms would just keep moving like he was tightening these wrenches. That's all he did. Originally, during the Industrial Revolution, we broke down all the tasks into linear, progressive tasks. The problem is today you and I still attack all the problems that are coming to us in a linear fashion. I mean, think about how often we have to-do lists and checklists, and most executives that I coach, Christian, are just dealing with the problems as they come. And so as a result, part of the reason why we're working on important things is because we get interrupted by everybody else's priorities, and we're not controlling our own priorities. And when we don't have a sense of control, our satisfaction diminishes and it drains our energy. We're not, you come into the workplace with your plan, hey, I'm going to get all these things done, and you get bombarded with everybody else's priorities and all the buzzers and buttons and whistles. So part of the answer is to know what your priorities are, have an overarching goal of what it is you want to accomplish. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go, but learning how to prioritize tasks. When things come to you, is this something I need to do right now? Or is this something that needs to be reprioritized for later? Even other people's priorities, such as emails coming in your inbox.
All right, so this takes me to a couple. You're taking me to a couple of questions here, Spencer. You know, thinking back to the Modern Times Charlie Chaplin thing, like you said, it was very industrial. It was assembly line. Everybody played this small part. I did my one thing, and I did that all day long, and that's all I did. Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, those priorities were set by a supervisor or a manager, up to a plant manager, and then above that. So I didn't have a lot of say in determining what I was going to do, and over time we've seen that evolve, especially with knowledge workers, where we have more autonomy in our minute to minute
Hence,
choices, right?
medium to high complexity economy today.
Right. So if I understand what you're saying is, uh, we, generally speaking, could perhaps do a better job of organizing ourselves and defining and prioritizing tasks based on their importance, their impact, their outcomes, etc.
That's one thing that we get to do, correct. And understand what's important to you. And so, for example, we're talking about taking breaks. What are things that we need to prioritize in our life? Exercise, family, recharging our batteries, um, self-development, study, whatever that is, leadership development or meditation. There are things that we need to spend time on. And some people are listening to this saying, well, wait a minute, I don't have time for that. Well, the challenge that we have is we have a limited amount of energy. Think of your energy as, you got a battery. And what's interesting, Christian, everybody has a different size battery. And just because you have a battery that needs to be recharged faster does not mean you're lazy, or somebody that has a bigger battery that goes longer. It means that they're more productive. One of the things that I do as a behavioral analyst, when we take an assessment, I use a tool that actually measures people's battery size. It's called kinetic energy. That's physical, emotional, and mental energy, and it's how long you can go and do the work without losing your mental edge. And that's productive time. And so part of that is understanding that throughout the day, your energy is going to be drawn down. And this is a concept called ego depletion by another psychologist, Roy Baumeister. And so, you talk about making time for priorities. If you do that, do you remember talking about Parkinson's law? I'm throwing a lot of things, but they all are related. Parkinson's law says
Right.
we usually fill the day Work expands to fill the time available, right? And so what happens is if I fill the time available, oftentimes it's coming at me with unimportant things. And so my important tasks that I'm only spending 60% of my time on, I'm spending 40% of my time on things that are unimportant that I could reprioritize into higher productivity tasks. Because I only have a limited amount of energy. Your energy I might have to recharge sooner than you do. And so I need to know what my energy is. I need to know, what is it that recharges my batteries? And this ego depletion is, have you ever gone through the end of the day, Christian, and you've been sitting in your chair the whole day and you are physically exhausted because you've been solving problems and doing mental work?
Oh, absolutely. I have definitely been there.
Yeah. And it feels
Definitely
like
been
you've been
there.
at the gym, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, mental work can be physically exhausting.
That's right. And
It's
so
absolutely
some of the
true.
things that depletes our energy can be even adapting our behavioral style, our communication style, working on complex problems. And so doing that at a time when your energy is highest is important. Yet when I talk to executives all over the world, a lot of times they're just taking the problems as they come. And some of them just work on the easy stuff because they want to get a lot of stuff checked off their list. And as a result, they're procrastinating the more difficult things. So if you take into account this idea of Parkinson's law, what would happen if you actually scheduled time for breaks, time for exercise, time for family, put those on the calendar? What would that do? That means there's less time to get everything done. So you actually force yourself to do more in less time. Well, the good news is that less time that you have will be more focused and more productive. Parkinson's law shows that. Think about the day before you go on vacation, how much you get done. What if on a micro level you do that throughout the day? I know I have to, uh, excuse me, I have a lunch appointment with Christian and Patrick. I'm going to get a lot done before that. Right? And so I put those things on my calendar first. I prioritize things that are important to me. And part of that priority may actually be time to solve problems where I have no interruptions, where I'm focused on solving a problem. So I'm narrowing my productive time. You see, there's a concept called production capability. If you run your car without ever changing the oil, without ever taking care of it, what's going to happen?
Oh, it's going to break down eventually, right?
It's going to break down
Yeah.
and it's going to cost a lot of money and it's not going to be able to take you places. Our bodies are the same way. The more we just work and work and work and work without caring for them, the less productive they become. And we must care for our own production capability by caring for ourselves so that we can be productive. The production capability is rest, is eating well, is taking breaks, so that when we come to work and managing our priorities properly, when we do that, we have so much more energy, so much more productivity. So I wanted to set that up. I hope all of that made sense and I didn't ramble too much if you're listening.
Well, I like the battery analogy for a couple of reasons. Well, many reasons, but just a couple additional things I'd like to mention. Number one
Yeah,
is, uh, although we may have these innate differences in battery capacity, it's possible because of lifestyle choices or because of our own, uh, you know, things that are going on outside of work, that these batteries may never fully recharge. I may start the day with a 60% charge
right,
because I
right.
didn't sleep well last night. I was stressed out over a family situation or finances or things like this. And so we
Exactly.
may not even have a full charge to begin with. And then another thing, just taking this battery analogy another step further, is our batteries may drain faster or slower depending on environmental conditions, just like an electric
Absolutely.
car, right? Uh,
Yep.
electric vehicles batteries will deplete quicker in cold weather than they would in weather that's it's more temperate, and we have to be aware of that ourselves. Sometimes if we're in situations depending on those situations, that battery that we have may deplete faster than it would in other situations. And so I think it's important for us to take control of our environments a little bit,
Right.
to make sure that we can charge those batteries more fully, and that they drain more steadily rather than rapidly, depending on depending on the conditions.
So let's talk about how we do that more. I mean, we've already talked about, prioritizing things that are important to you. I think Stephen Covey talked about that in his time management matrix. He called those activities important but not urgent, right? Production capability enhancing, working on your environment, working on yourself. But most of us spend time in urgent and important. That's fighting fires, other people's priorities, taking those activities or demands as they come. But he's saying, great, we're always going to have those fires, but if we can shift some of our energy into prevention, to recharging that battery, then the time that we have to do the work that is important can be more productive. It's just no good. I mean, my son-in-law and his brother, they both, my son-in-law worked for Bain, his brother worked for Goldman Sachs. There are some companies that have a culture, Christian, where it's expected that you work 80 to 100 hours a week. Now, these kids are out of college, they're bright, they're hardworking, they're hungry, but they can only do it for a couple of years because they're spent after that. I mean, they can't have lives, they can't have families. It's all work. And so the the stress and the anxiety that creates a situation where they have to eventually leave. They can't stay, or they get made partner and they eventually now get to work 60 to 70 hours a week. So, but there are organizations where that is the norm. And what we've found based on these studies and every other study is that working longer and harder and just pushing through is not the way to go. You'll make more mistakes. I remember coaching an attorney who was a litigator, Christian, and what was happening was he had he had some challenges with his natural personality traits that were not typically what a litigator requires. And so he had to spend a lot of energy in being assertive and doing certain things. And he, on top of that, he wasn't as organized as he needed to be. And so what would happen is he'd make mistakes. Even though he had a personality that wanted things to be accurate and perfect and be prepared, he never was. And it was creating burdens for the partners because he was, kept, it was like a cascading effect. It became less and less and less productive. And it's not okay to just push through because you'll make more mistakes and cost more, create more expenses.
So, what about this, Spencer? I have this phone
Yep.
and I find myself, working on something for an hour and then my brain starts to get tired. And in the meantime, alerts and notifications have been popping on this thing. And so I'm like, oh, I need to take a little bit of break. I pull this thing out. I start answering texts. I start commenting on or responding to LinkedIn post comments. I'm doing all this stuff. And then 25 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I guess I got to get back to work. I mean, is this a good break? Is this mobile
So let
device?
me ask
Is this
you,
good to use during breaks?
yeah, let me to ask you how you feel after you've done that. Do you feel energized after you've
No,
done that?
I actually feel more tired.
Yeah,
It's like,
it is actually, and according to this research, this most recent one that you just mentioned, um, 93% of us will spend our break time on social media, and it is not recharging. It is not energizing. It is actually depleting and frustrating, and so it's draining our energy even more. So I turn almost all my notifications off. I don't think I've had only my wife's texts make a noise or vibrate. My phone doesn't ring. Uh, I may see it on my watch if it's somebody I need to talk to, or my emails don't buzz. I don't get. I refuse to get all these interruptions because with the technology I have, I could be constantly being interrupted. So that is not a great way to recharge. So we should talk about how to have breaks. I mean, so what have you found based on these studies of 80 analyzing 80 studies, and apparently it was Zaha Premji, Timothy Wingate, Connie Dang, and Lisa Balinger and Nick Turner talked about how pausing throughout the day recharges our batteries, and what are some of the things that they found that do work.
Well, going outside, getting out of your chair and going out and breathing some fresh air, maybe taking a walk, maybe just sitting in a park, maybe uh yeah, just breathing in that fresh air. It doesn't have to be a long period of time, but just get out of the environment that you're in and get into another one that's going to refresh you. That was an important one, I think.
And what if there is no green space? What if you can't get outside? I mean, what else can we do to take a break? And how long should they be?
Well, from the research and also based on what you said, it varies. And some of that may vary based on individual. Like you said, we have our own different capacities. And some of us may be more energized in the morning, maybe more energized in the afternoon. What they suggest is maybe taking longer breaks in the afternoon, because you might be more depleted in the afternoon, and taking shorter breaks in the morning. But everybody kind of has to monitor their own. I wish I had the 5 bars like on the top of my forehead, or on my on my wrist or something. It's like, oh wow, I'm down to 20%. I need to take a break.
I need some
But
vitamin D, or I need to go walk my dog or snuggle. Now, the research on pets is somewhat inconclusive, but I think most of us recognize that a dog can just rejuvenate our soul and make us happy and make us feel good. So maybe just a quick walk outside with the dog and getting some licks on the face is just the ticket, right?
oh yeah, well, I'm not a pet person personally, but I
Me
don't
neither.
have any animosity toward pet people. I think that's good for them that they have these companions, as long as you clean up after them. I think that's great.
Oh
But
yeah.
another thing that we need to consider is what kind of, if we're in leadership positions, what kind of culture are we setting, or what kind of example are we setting
Right.
as leaders? And are we pushing people either explicitly or implicitly to not take breaks, to not recharge? I don't know what you've seen in the work that you've done with executives all over the world, Spencer, but you know, uh, what can executives do, or team leaders do, to help foster a culture of productivity, but also one of well-being?
Yeah, and that's it's really important that they do that, because what happens sometimes is we have this, as you said, sometimes explicit, but many times implicit, right? The boss comes in early, stays late, and there's this unwritten culture that you stay until 7 o'clock at night, and that's just what's expected. I have another son-in-law who's an attorney, and his team keeps telling him, you need to go home. You need to shut off your computer. And he keeps saying, well, I've got all this work I need to respond to. And in that case, it's the inverse, right? The employee is spending all the time, and management is saying, no, it's time to shut down and go home. And so making sure that you set boundaries as to what is expected. Um, Lead by example. Go home, have a life. Work uh, to live, not live to work. If you have a pet, take a break with your pet, and let your employees see it. Go outside yourself. Take a lunch break. Take some people on your team on a lunch break, and say, hey, we're not talking about work. We're talking about life, and just get to know each other and spend time doing those kinds of things. So, I mean, there's several things that you can do to take a break. You can exercise. You can, of course, we talked about social media. That's not a great way, but going for a short walk, socializing with others. Believe it or not, that can be productive. We have to be careful that we're not interrupting other people's productive time. But if there are social spaces for gathering where people go to take a break, a ping pong table or a break room or something where people can just let off some steam, well, then that's appropriate, that because other people are having, a break at the same time you are. And giving some autonomy about how people use their break, right? I mean, if we mandate breaks at a certain time, well, then that's actually not very effective because we are taking control away from employees. And as you mentioned earlier, I think one of the hallmarks of our economy today is the workers are very independent today, and it's something that actually increases satisfaction is when people have control over their lives. So if you can give them control over something as simple as when do they go to lunch, when do they take their breaks, within reasonable parameters, that's something that is, I think, very empowering and recharging.
So I've got a couple of comments. Not number one, not all industries allow that, right? I mean, we could be involved in customer service, or we're in retail, or working in the restaurant industry or whatever like that. And sometimes you just have to have these scheduled breaks because otherwise you don't have enough people on the floor to do the work. But I agree with what you're saying that in a knowledge environment, we should have a little bit more autonomy. One thing that I want to talk about on the culture side, I was recently having a conversation with an individual. This person's an attorney who recently joined a firm, one of the reasons that they joined this firm was promoting this work-life balance. And uh so not the Goldman Sachs Bain type of uh environment, but something that's a lot more relaxed, and so on and so forth. But when he got there, he overheard conversations the partners were having. So he just, happened to be in the room or whatever. And the partners, on occasion, they would talk about such and such individual who just really wasn't putting in the effort, or and even, recalling things that happened 5 years ago where this person just wasn't as productive as they thought that they could be. And so even though the company policies are set up so that it's all about this work life balance, and not having too many billable hours and all this kind of stuff, the leaders, just by the conversations that they're having amongst themselves, are promoting an environment of fear that if I don't bust my tail all the time, if I'm not available 24/7 to take this call and address this urgent situation, then I'm viewed as not reliable. And
We're dedicated,
I'm not going to be called on for future work. And so people are feeling tense. There's a feeling of insecurity when it comes to employment and things like this, because the partners are having these kinds of conversations, and it completely flips on its head what their HR department is trying to push through, with policies to promote work-life balance. And I think we need to be cognizant of that as leaders. We need to be careful about how we talk about people in our firm, or in our organization, because if we're saying, yeah, well, I had this urgent deadline and so never answered the phone and didn't step up to the plate, then what we're doing is we're signaling to our folks, you better be around and you better be available to answer the phone. I don't care if you're on vacation. I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night. You better darn well pick up the phone.
right?
And it just completely negates all of this stuff that we're talking about, with taking breaks. So I'm just curious, how you would react to this kind of a situation, and if you've seen this in organizations that you've worked with over the years.
Absolutely, I see it all the time. There was actually and one of the places I see it is also in professional services firms like CPA firms. There's one firm that I'm aware of where the managing partner, uh, now in his 70s, still working 80 hours a week, and expecting all the other partners to be able to do that as well. And one of the impacts that that's having is they're not able to recruit new Gen Z kids coming out of college. They just don't want to be part of that. They want to be able to have time for life, for development, for they want to do something meaningful. And sometimes just counting beans all day is not, when you just focus on one thing throughout your life, if it's just work, there's no multifaceted dimensions to your life. And so when the problems at work show up, they have a bigger negative impact. But if I've got Spencer, the father, Spencer, the grandfather, the husband, the outdoorsman, the youth leader, the church leader, the businessman, the coach, I have all of these different parts of my life. If there's one challenge going over here, it doesn't have the same impact. If I have balance, and life balance is really a myth, right? But if I have uh, social experiences, I have entertainment, I have sports pursuits. My wife and I buy season tickets to plays. We've scheduled time to go see the Laver Cup in Vancouver. Why? Because we love tennis. Well, we've planned that. We made time to go see the Rose Bowl and do things that are, sporting events are fantastic for recharging, for just being with people and cheering. Last night we were cheering for our Vegas Golden Knights, won the second game for the Stanley Cups. We were ecstatic and just having fun. There's other stuff to our life than just the problems that show up at work. And so this firm is having a problem because they are so one unidimensional, focused on work. And I've coached many CPAs that have similar problems. One of them was getting all kinds of pressure from the partners because he was so perfectionistic. This was a personality challenge. It would take him so long to handle all the clients' questions that he would fall behind because he never wanted to be wrong. Knew the answers, but he had to research it to make sure that he was right. And so sometimes it's a behavioral issue where we're having a productivity challenge, and that can be coached, right? And we can work through stuff like that. And I think pressure from the partners to be more productive and to work through some of that stuff uh, can be handled better than it was in this situation. Sometimes it's just get more stuff done, and they put pressure on, and that actually exacerbates the problem. So I do see that a lot. It was a long answer, but yes, you're right. We do have
Well,
Dr.
one last thing that I wanted to ask you about, Spencer,
Yeah,
is things have evolved since COVID. A lot of people are working remotely, which
yeah.
adds another dimension to making sure that you can recharge your batteries and you can take breaks. So, what are you seeing out in the world today with remote workers and how they are recharging or not recharging their batteries?
Well, I just actually saw an article on this last night. I don't know if I hesitate, but it was saying that in England there's a study because of remote work. It's allowing people to have more intimacy in their life. I think 1 in 10 is taking some break time to enjoy some some other
Hey,
stuff
there's
to
no better way to
recharge their
recharge a battery.
batteries. Yeah. So I think just working remotely, what they're finding is if you work remotely, it's easier for you to go get your nails done, or to uh, go get a massage or something that instead of spending so much time on commuting, you can take some of that time and apply it to things that you want to do for yourself.
Yeah, I see that too. Although I do feel personally I have a challenge because I can tell when my energy is getting depleted a little bit, but my go-to is to just get up and walk into the kitchen and I open the refrigerator door and I look in there and then I open up a cupboard and I look in there and I think, oh, that looks kind of tasty. I end up,
Yes.
I end up having a lot of snack breaks. I find that doing that a lot more remotely than I did when I was working in an office. Well, What other advice do you have? What other things are you seeing, Spencer, before we wrap it up today?
So I think we've talked a lot. I think one of the things that I could add to this, there was another study. Let me just share one more study, and it's a Harvard Business Review report that is really good. It's called "Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time," and the idea, briefly, is there's spiritual energy, there's emotional energy, there's physical energy. Even just exercising, taking time to exercise will create a cognitive boost for up to 20 hours. I don't know if you've ever felt, if you got a test coming, it's like, hey, it's like, I just got to grind and study. Sometimes taking a break and exercising makes your mind sharper. And they found that, and this was done in 2007, Wachovia Bank employees participated in a study, and when they managed their energy, it went straight to the bottom line. They found a 13 percentage point greater year over year increase in revenue from those people who were able to take time and take breaks and exercise. And then there was another group year over year. They had a control group and an exercise group, that were managing their breaks and energy. They found increases in revenues by 20%. So I have one little thing that I think our listeners would be interested in. How about just a few questions to see how, if they're headed for an energy crisis? How's that?
No, let's do it. What
Okay,
are the
so
questions?
body one. Now, the first is about body. So ask yourself, I don't regularly get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and I often wake up feeling tired. Okay, so um, what you need to do is you need to score yourself on, um, if you have a 4, for example, if that's 4, 0 to 4. So if that's not true for you, put a 0. If it's somewhat true, a 1. If it's significant, so 0 to 4. So I don't regularly get sleep to 7 to 8 hours. So on a scale from 0 to 4, myself, I would say 1. I do pretty well in sleep area. But this morning I woke up at 5:30. I don't know. And then I went through my morning routine. Number 2, I frequently skip breakfast or I settle for something that isn't nutritious. So if that's not you, that's a 0. If that is you, it's a 4. Make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't work out enough, meaning cardiovascular training at least 3 times a week and strength training at least once a week. I don't take regular breaks during the day to truly renew and recharge, or I often eat lunch at my desk if I eat at all. So that's the body. Now think about your scores. How you doing? If um, if if you only got 0 to 3 in that area, you're doing excellent. If you got 4 to 6, you have reasonable energy management skills. If you got 7 to 10, you have significant energy deficits. If you got 11 to 16, you're in big trouble. All right, emotions. Emotional energy. I frequently find myself feeling irritable, impatient, or anxious at work, especially when work is demanding. I don't have enough time with my family and loved ones. When I'm with them, I'm not always really with them. I have too little time for activities that I most deeply enjoy. I don't stop frequently enough to express my appreciation to others and to savor my accomplishments and blessings. Those are pretty important questions to ask, right?
Yeah.
Got one more, two more. Mind. Here's your mind. I have difficulty focusing on one thing at a time, and I am easily distracted during the day, especially by email. I spend much of my day reacting to immediate crises and demands rather than focusing on activities with a longer term value and high leverage, which is what I was talking about in the beginning, right? I don't take enough time for reflection, strategizing, and creative thinking. I work in the evenings or on weekends, and I almost never take an email free vacation. I fasted from Instagram for an entire week. It was awesome. Spirit, this is the last one. I don't spend enough time at work doing what I do best and enjoy most. There are significant gaps between what I say is most important to me in my life and how I actually allocate my time and energy. My decisions at work are more often influenced by external demands than by a strong, clear sense of my own purpose. And lastly, I don't invest enough time and energy in making positive difference to others or to the world. And you think those are good questions to kind of self-evaluate?
Yeah, I think they're good questions. Well, what happens if you're like, okay, well, I feel pretty good. I'm just, me personally, I'm like, all right, I'm making mental notes here. I feel pretty good on the emotional side, the physical side, not so much.
Yeah,
And the mind thing is a bit of a mix. I'll be honest with
yeah,
the spirit thing. It's kind of in the middle. Some areas okay, others definitely need improvement. And so, I suspect that there are strategies to help you if you have the desire to change those scores, right?
right. Well,
I'm
remember our
also
friend from
curious though.
Australia that talked
Yeah,
about?
Lisa Sams.
Yes. Yeah, so I don't think you have to be a a gym rat. I think just even just getting outside in that green space, eating healthy, getting a massage. I try to do that at least once a month, or getting just doing some things that make you feel good. I think those are great places to start.
And do you typically find correlations or say, oh, well, if I have a deficit in this area, then I more likely will have a deficit in other areas as well? Or is it, are there linkages, for example, between the physical, body and the mind or the emotions, et cetera?
Most absolutely. And what I found is actually one of the things I recommend our listeners if they want to take one of my ProScan assessments. One of the things that it will measure is their kinetic energy, how much of it is being drained by six environments: their work, their home, their social life, their beliefs, their health, their financial situation. All of those things can create distress. And this will measure the level of distress they're under and, as a result, satisfaction. So, and that's related to your satisfaction, your engagement. As we talked about in the very beginning, right now, 60% are not engaged, they're not satisfied, and as a result, productivity is falling. When productivity falls, we don't feel as good about ourselves. Our opportunities are diminished. We are looking for some, out. We come home drained, and as a result, our family doesn't get the best of us. They get our frustrated self, and then that just spirals, and everything impacts everything else. That's what I find.
Yeah, I think I find that too. Okay, fascinating conversation, Spencer. I'm going to go let you recharge your batteries by meeting and seeing your baby granddaughter. I think
Yes,
it's
thank you.
absolutely amazing. You've helped so many organizations over decades improve their performance and become more productive. If our listeners, our viewers are interested in learning more about how you can help them, if they want to take this ProScan survey, what's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, message me. Thank you, Christian. Message me on LinkedIn. We actually had Dr. Elwanda uh, make a couple of comments while we were talking today, just about our discussion today. So that's a great way to just reach out to me on LinkedIn. And Christian, how about you? I mean, it's major organizations that are hiring you to serve them. How do people find you?
People can find me on LinkedIn as well. That's the easiest way to do it. Just look for Christian Napier on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with anyone and have a conversation. So, Spencer, thank you so much for bringing this topic to our attention. And I look forward to taking a nice productive break now, as do you. And listeners and viewers, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We're grateful for you, and we'll catch you again soon.